You wake up one morning and something feels off. You go through the motions, brushing your teeth, checking your phone, putting on the same mask you wore yesterday. And yet, beneath it all, there's a tug, a whisper, a quiet ache you can't name. Something deep within you is hungry, not for food, not for success, not even for love in the way the world defines it, but for wholeness. What if I told you that the force behind that hunger, that ache you've never been able to silence, is something you've been trained your entire life to ignore? Sexuality. Not the act, not the images splashed across billboards and screens, but the psychological power, the raw, untamed life force that lives in your bones, your dreams, your silence. The part of you that still remembers what it means to feel fully alive. Carl Jung understood something most people are too afraid to confront. That sexual energy, what he called the libido, is not just about physical desire. It's the spark of your soul, the primal essence of creativity, spirituality, vitality, and truth. And yet, most of us are at war with it, because we've been taught to fear it, to shame it, to split ourselves in two, the part we show the world, and the part we bury. And in doing so, we don't just suppress desire, we suppress ourselves. This story isn't about sex, it's about you. It's about the real reason you feel disconnected, confused, or numb. And it starts in the shadow. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror, but it's cracked. The image you see is distorted, incomplete. That mirror is your psyche, and the cracks are the result of everything you've been taught to suppress. Your shame, your longing, your emotional hunger, your unspoken desires. Jung called it the shadow, the hidden part of the self, where everything you've rejected is. And buried deep within that shadow is your sexual truth. Not just your preferences, not just your fantasies, but the core of your instinctual, emotional, creative being. And when you suppress that truth, it doesn't disappear, it mutates. It shows up in your life in ways you don't recognize, in jealousy, in addictions, in confusion, in patterns of self-sabotage you can't explain. Ever lashed out at someone and didn't know why? Ever craved something? Someone? So intensely it scared you? That wasn't just you being irrational. That was the shadow knocking. The energy you've denied is trying to find its way back into your consciousness. But because you've been taught to fear it, it comes out sideways as anxiety, overthinking, disconnection, and we wonder why we're exhausted. But here's the paradox. We live in a hypersexualized world. Bodies everywhere, performance everywhere, stimulation at every corner. And yet, we're deeply disconnected from sensuality. Sensuality is not sex. Sensuality is presence. It's your ability to feel, to taste a fruit and actually notice it, to touch someone and feel their soul, to sit in your body and not flinch at the silence. We've confused performance with connection, stimulation with intimacy, and in doing so, we've numbed the very part of ourselves that makes us human. Jung warned us about this. What is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. You don't face your shadow, you'll date it, you'll fight it, you'll raise it, you'll become the very thing you never wanted to be. So how do we reclaim the part of ourselves we've buried? Start with curiosity. What triggers you in others? What behaviors do you judge harshly? What fantasies make you uncomfortable? Not because they're wrong, but because they threaten the image you've spent your life polishing. Those aren't accidents. Those are breadcrumbs. clues from the unconscious about what you've left behind. The dreams you dismiss, the emotions you numb, the desires you shame. Jung believed that the unconscious never speaks in straight lines. It whispers in symbols, elusive, poetic, and often unnerving. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and tell you the truth. It shows you in dreams you barely remember, in faces that feel familiar but aren't, in gut feelings you can't explain. And often it speaks loudest in the places we least expect, in desire, in shame, in sex. But here's the twist. Sex in dreams is rarely just about sex. To Jung, it symbolized something far more profound than physical intimacy. It was a metaphor for the merging of opposites, the sacred act of uniting two warring halves of your soul. Not man and woman, but conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, who you think you are and who you've banished to the dark. Think about it. That person you dream of, that intimate encounter that startles you awake or sweating and confused, isn't always about attraction. Sometimes it's your soul reaching for what it lost, for what you've disowned. The lover in the dream isn't just a lover. It's a mirror, a symbol, a piece of you crying out to be integrated. Maybe it's the courage you abandoned to be accepted. Maybe it's the tenderness you buried to appear strong. Maybe it's the inner child, still aching to be held. Jung called this symbolic union the conjunctio, the integration of opposites, a mystical alchemy where your inner masculine and feminine, your order and chaos, your intellect and instinct, finally meet. And when they do, it's not just a dream, it's a calling. It's the unconscious saying, you are not whole yet, but you can be. That's what sex represents in the dream world. Not lust, not escape, but reunion. The slow, painful, sacred process of becoming yourself again. The masculine with the feminine, the body with the soul, the self with the shadow. This is the sacred work of individuation, becoming whole again. And it shows up most clearly in your relationships. Think about someone you couldn't let go of. Someone who felt magnetic, irresistible, even if they were wrong for you. Chances are, they weren't just a person. They were a projection, a mirror of something unresolved within you. We don't just fall in love with people. We fall in love with what they awaken in us, that electric pull you feel towards someone. It's not just chemistry, it's memory. Not the kind stored in the brain, but the kind buried in the soul. You're not just drawn to who they are. You're drawn to who you become in their presence, or more precisely, who you remember yourself to be. Sometimes it's a laugh you haven't heard in years, your own. Sometimes it's a sense of aliveness you thought was dead. Sometimes it's the safety to cry or the freedom to speak without filters. That is what we fall in love with, a reawakening. You see, love, especially the romantic kind, has a mystical way of unlocking doors within us we didn't even know were sealed shut. The parts we lost, the parts we were told to suppress, the exiled selves we wrapped in shame and left behind. That wild curiosity, that soft vulnerability, that rebellious truth-teller, that unashamed dreamer. They don't just kiss your lips, they kiss the ghost of who you were before the world told you who to be. But here's where the heartbreak creeps in. Eventually the high fades, the projection collapses, the fairy tale cracks under the weight of reality, and suddenly they seem different, colder, more distant, not who they once were. But the truth, they didn't betray us. The spell broke, the mirror cracked, and all we're left with is ourselves. because they were never the source. They were the catalyst. They didn't give you those feelings, they reflected them. And when the mirror shatters, you don't just mourn them. You mourn the version of you that they brought back to life. And that's the real ache. Not that they're gone, but that the part of you they awakened is slipping away again. But it doesn't have to, because now you've seen it, felt it, touched it. The task now is to stop chasing them and start reclaiming you, to take back what they unlocked, to integrate what they mirrored, to become whole without needing a mirror to remind you who you are. And in the process, we lose the sacredness of intimacy, the raw, trembling honesty of being seen, not for who we pretend to be, but for who we really are. So what now? What do you do with the energy you've suppressed? You listen to it, not like a slave, not to be ruled by it, but like a student. You invite it in, you ask it questions, you write your dreams down, you sit in silence and notice what stirs. You stop running. Because running from your sexual energy is running from your soul. And that requires facing the fire, the grief, the fear, the ache of everything you've denied. But on the other side of that fire is freedom. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is your invitation to make peace with your darkness, not to indulge it, not to fear it, but to integrate it. To understand that the sexual energy you've repressed is not the enemy. It is your power. Your creativity, your intuition, your aliveness. You were never meant to be tamed. You were never meant to perform your life like a script someone else wrote. You were born to feel, to burn, to awaken. And now is the time. So ask yourself, what part of me have I silenced to be accepted? What longing have I dismissed to appear normal? What would it look like to stop performing and start becoming? Because this isn't just about sexuality. It's about sovereignty. You are not broken. You are divided. You are not lost. You are buried. And now, it's time to dig, to feel, to integrate, to become. Because the energy you've been taught to fear is the very force that will set you free. And your life, your real life, begins the moment you stop apologizing for your fire and start rising with it.